Hello and welcome to our webinar on investing for women, tips, strategies, and case studies. My name is Larissa Greene and I'm joined by my partner, Reneika Lightbourne. Today we're going to talk about our different experiences and also how they relate to investments in a self-directed IRA. We encourage everybody on the webinar today to ask any questions that you might have. We do keep the webinar muted, but we are going to take questions to the question box, so feel free to type your questions in there. We'll be monitoring that box throughout the webinar, so please feel free to get your questions answered as we go. I also wanted to mention that we uploaded the slides as a PDF and handout, so if you look at your navigation bar for GoToWebinar, you'll see them loaded there, so you can download those and review them or share them. This webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a copy of the recording later on, so if you can't stay through the whole thing or you'd like to review it or share it, please feel welcome to do so. Again, my name is Larissa Greene. I've been with Advanta since 2011. I do marketing, education, and business development for Advanta. Prior to my position, I also did new accounts. I did check coding and receiving for IRAs, receiving income and paying expenses. I also helped with transactions and transfers, so I've done a little bit of everything. And my contact information is here in case you have any more specific questions or personal questions that you'd like to ask. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm joined today by my partner in Atlanta, Reneika Lightbourne. How are you doing today, Reneika?
Doing wonderful, Larissa. Thank you so much for co-hosting this event with me. Thank you for all the attendees for joining us. Like Larissa, I'm also one of the business development specialists here at Advanta. I've been with Advanta as an employee since 2019, but I'm also, like Larissa, an active self-directed IRA investor. I'm actually an Advanta client first, so I've sat where most of you are sitting in terms of exploring self-direction. Again, if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can give me a call, send an email, or visit our website to schedule that consultation.
So today's webinar is really sort of based around the fact that Reneika and I both invest through self-direction. And we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences today, but really we kind of came up with this webinar with hopes to inspire others with our stories on how we got started and the different investments allowed in a self-directed IRA, but also just very typically men and women save for retirement differently. And although we really started this in order to speak to other women, we hope that everybody on the webinar today learns how to take control and truly diversify their portfolios with self-directed IRAs or retirement accounts. And we're going to talk about different investments. And so hopefully that will inspire you to look at different investments for your retirement accounts. Women, regardless of their status in the workplace, working full-time, part-time, or as moms raising their children full-time, can save for retirement. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk to, hopefully everybody on the webinar about different ways to save for retirement and then also invest and grow those retirement accounts. And the strategies we'll discuss today work for everyone who isn't familiar with self-direction or alternative investments, but hopes to learn about that. Reneika and I are just two women who were inspired to self-direct and take control, and we hope to inspire everyone to do the same. Advanta IRA, just keep in mind we have classes all the time. We have webinars always going on, but we don't provide investment advice and we don't endorse products. All the information is just for educational purposes. We can't give tax, legal, or investment advice. And although myself and Reneika will be talking today about some personal experiences, it should not be taken as investment advice, but instead, again, we hope to inspire you to learn more about saving for retirement and taking control with a self-directed retirement account. At the beginning of the webinar, we always like to talk about takeaway points, and I think a big part of that is because it's a lot of information. So if you're not familiar with self-direction, you're not familiar with alternative investments, when we start talking about those investments and strategies, it does get to be a little overwhelming. So there's just a few takeaway points we like to really emphasize at the beginning of the webinar so that you can sort of concentrate on those specific points, and anything else you can always reach out to Reneika or I to discuss. And sometimes it takes a few times of hearing it to really learn about those strategies. I know for myself personally it did, and so that's why we really like to reiterate that. First point, contributions are flexible, whether you're working full-time, part-time, or raising your children full-time and making spousal contributions. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but just the point being that, if you are working full-time, or what if you're part-time and you're a student, or you're staying at home and raising your children, you can still make contributions, you can still save for retirement. The second point is that alternative asset class is nearly endless, and you're going to hear us talk about all the different investments you can make in a self-directed IRA using alternative asset classes. And any income is deposited to the retirement account. So remember that this is growth for your retirement savings, and that's going to be really important when you reach that age of retirement and you're looking to start taking money out of that account. So income is deposited to the account, and we're also going to talk about how the expenses are paid by the IRA as well. So those are our key points for today's webinar. And I'm going to hand it over to Reneika from here.
Thank you, Larissa. Before we get going, I just wanted to give you some history, some background about Advanta and who we are. We've been in the business for about 20 plus years, and we are recognized as the leading self-directed IRA administrator in the business. Like Larissa referenced, we don't give our clients any tax, legal, or investment advice, but our Advanta team is comprised of professionals such as attorneys and also certified IRA professionals. Our headquarters is in the Largo, Florida area, which is where Larissa's based. I'm here in our Atlanta office, but we do work with clients nationwide. At Advanta, we're proud to say that we hold, well over $2.5 billion under management. And one of the things that I personally enjoy as an Advanta client, but also to get to extend that courtesy as an Advanta employee, is the fact that we provide, concierge style service. So as an Advanta client, you do have a dedicated account manager who's going to be with you for the life of your account with us, and also receiving, great educational content, which includes today's webinar and featured guest speakers. So I would encourage you to visit our website, advantaira.com. You can check out our events page for some of our upcoming events, which includes later this week, I'll actually be hosting Pitch Promote Prosper. It's a virtual networking event that I'll do with my colleague, Corey. And then next week, Tuesday, Alex, he's going to be doing a webinar on HSA, and we'll touch on the different account types later. Like Larissa mentioned, this webinar is recorded, so you can, check out our video library or go to our YouTube page. Typically, we have it uploaded within 24 to 48 business hours. My colleague Alex Perney hosts a podcast, so I definitely encourage you to check out some of the content that he produces. Check out our blog; it's great for industry news, any updates as relates to self-direction as a whole. So if this is a new concept for you, or you're just starting out on your investment journey, don't be, taken aback by that. The reason being is, most common IRAs are held at the banks and brokerage firms, and we know that their business model is stock, bonds, and mutual funds. So they're not going to tell you you have the option to go out and diversify and invest in alternative assets, like we'll talk about today. But believe it or not, self-direction has been around since the beginning of time. The IRS does allow you to invest in a long list of different things that we'll touch on. So when it comes to self-directing, or the types of accounts that can be self-directed, it's the ones that you're already familiar with. For individuals, you can certainly look to self-direct traditional and Roth IRAs. With traditional, it's pre-tax, you get the tax break up front. And then, of course, during your retirement years, once you take a distribution or an RMD, you pay your taxes at that time. Whereas with a Roth IRA, you elect to pay taxes up front, you grow that account over time. As long as you held your Roth IRA for 5 years and your retirement age, which is 59 and a half, those distributions are tax-free. For entrepreneurs or businesswomen, you have your own business, a side business, you can certainly look to self-direct SEPs, Simples, solo 401ks. Larissa will touch more on that in a few slides, but it does give you greater flexibility, does give you higher contribution limits. Some lesser known accounts that can also be self-directed, and I implore you to definitely consider those, are educational savings accounts. So if you have children or grandchildren, nieces and nephews, definitely consider investing through a smaller, ESA or HSAs. For HSAs, you do have to have a high deductible insurance plan, so definitely check with your plan provider to see if you're eligible. And then, of course, knowing that any former or former employer plan, whether it's an old 401k, 403b, or TSP type plan, can be self-directed. So as it relates to plan contributions, they are flexible indeed. You want to make sure that you do have earned income. So as long as you have earned income, you're likely eligible to make a contribution to the traditional and Roth IRAs, and I'll talk on the actual contribution amounts. So it's based on, again, the type of retirement account and the allowable limits. If you work full time, and as long as you have enough earned income, you're likely to make those contributions up to the applicable limits. If you work part time, you can contribute up to the amount that you earn, or up to the actual, contribution limit, whichever is less. So just be mindful of that. If you are a full-time, parent, in terms of, stay-at-home parent, and one spouse is working, as long as that spouse has enough earned income, they can make a contribution to your IRA on your behalf, to a traditional Roth IRA, up to the standard limits. In terms of the actual contribution limits, specifically for 2023, for traditional or Roth IRA, if you're under the age of 50, you can put in $6,500. Again, if you're, your spouse, if you're a stay-at-home mom and your spouses have enough income, they can also make that contribution to you as well, to your IRA as well. So if you're over the age of 50, just know that you have an additional $1,000 that you can catch up. For ESAs, you can put in $2,000 per year per child. If you have an HSA, so whether it's an individual or a family plan, for individuals, you can put in $3,850. For family, you can contribute $7,750. And also, if you're over the age of 55, as it relates to an HSA, you have an additional $1,000 that you can contribute. In terms of the employer plans, again, so whether you have your own business, or you have a side hustle, and you are eligible to contribute to an employer-sponsored plan, you do have greater flexibility, higher contribution limits that Larissa will touch on in a few slides.
So we're going to talk just briefly about self-employed and side hustles and everything in between, just so that everybody's aware, because sometimes we're working full-time, but we have a side hustle. We're working to make that business, become a reality, that dream become a reality, and work for ourselves full-time at some point. Or maybe we're continuing our side hustle there, just to do things like save for retirement. And if that's the case, well, you can still have a plan for the self-employed. So even if you contribute to a larger plan through your W-2 job. So, even though I work for Advanta IRA and I participate in our 401k, if I had a side hustle, so I have self-employment income as well, then I can contribute to my own plan for my business. And it doesn't have to be a formally established entity. I can do it as a sole proprietor. I might have an LLC, or maybe even an S Corp or a C Corp. Any of those things will work and make you eligible for a plan for the self-employed. So you get all of the benefits of traditional business retirement plans, plus you can defer a larger amount on an annual basis. Your contributions are still going to be flexible. So remember, at the very beginning, we talked about flexible contributions. Well, that's still true when you're self-employed or you have a side hustle. You can make the contributions that you feel are appropriate for the year up to the limit. And if, let's say, this year you just start your business going, and then next year you have a lot of earnings and contributions that you can make, well, you can contribute more next year, and you can continue on that scaling up with your contributions as your business scales. Some of the plans allow employer and employee contributions, and the solo 401k even allows a third type of contribution that will allow you to really max out that account. There's access to tax-free loans through a solo 401k. These plans are very cost effective for administration. And at this point, all of them allow Roth contributions. You don't have to make Roth contributions, again, falling in line with that flexible contribution, but you can. And so when you start your business, if you're looking for some tax deductions for yourself and your business, you might do that through making pre-tax contributions. As your business grows, you might make Roth contributions, or some combination of both. And as you scale up, you might say, you know what, I would rather have the deductions as my business grows. You can do that as well. So there's a lot of flexibility here in these types of plans. SEPs simples, and solo 401ks are the plans we're talking about. And two of those, the SEPs and simples, are considered IRAs. So their plan administration is the same as a traditional or Roth IRA. Your plan administrator, Advanta IRA, will do all of your tax filing for you in those plans, making them very cost effective and simple to administer. The solo 401k has a few options. You can determine how much you want to do versus how much you want us to do and help you with. And so you can be your plan administrator and trustee and your bookkeeper if you want to, or you can hire us to do the bookkeeping for you, and we'll also do your tax filing. We wanted to circle back to this slide just to show you the differences in contribution limits, just keeping in mind again that these contributions are flexible. So although the SEP and solo 401k, for example, do allow up to $66,000 this year, you don't have to contribute that much. If you're just getting your business started, if this is just a side hustle for you, then you can contribute $2,000 or $3,000 if you feel that's appropriate. And then as your business scales, you can scale up your contributions. And you can see here, the SEP and simple again allow up to $66,000. That amount is arrived at differently for each of these plans. We won't go into it too much here, but we actually do have whole webinars on plans for the self-employed, and we'd be happy to send you links to that. If you send either myself or Reneika an email, we'll get that information over to you for you to review it. A simple IRA has a smaller contribution limit, but that might make sense depending on how your business is set up. And then you get both employee and employer contributions in simple IRAs and in solo 401ks. And many of these accounts can be paired. So just because you have a SEP IRA, it doesn't mean you can't also, for example, have a traditional or a Roth IRA. So there's a lot to take advantage of here. And so give us a call, or if you have specific questions, just let us know. We're happy to help you understand how those work. So types of investments here, we're going to talk about a few specific asset classes as we go through the webinar, but we always like to give you a list of things that we see pretty often here at Advanta IRA. So the IRS only gives us a very short list of things you can't invest in. And so we like to say when you self-direct, just about the sky is the limit, and you can invest in what you know best. So taking control, like we mentioned at the beginning, and sort of empowering yourself to invest in things you understand. And so we do see a lot of real estate at Advanta IRA. You're not limited to real estate at Advanta for your account. So if you have one account, a lot of times people will ask me, well, since I have this account and I want to invest in real estate, does that mean I have to set up another account to invest in cryptocurrency later on? And the truth is, your IRA account, you only need one, and it can make several different investments into asset classes outside of just real estate. So we see a lot of single family homes for long-term and short-term rentals and rehab projects. We're going to talk about tax lien investing in an IRA. We do see people invest in mobile homes and mobile home parks, and they might be doing that directly or through syndication. So people pooling funds into limited partnerships and LLCs that you can subscribe to or invest into in order to invest in mobile homes and mobile home parks and multifamily investments. We also see people invest into land. And I like that example because it really does demonstrate that the IRS isn't going to require that you have a regular income back to your IRA for that investment. So you might purchase land, do some land speculating, and hold that until the value of the land grows, just making sure to pay your taxes and insurance through your retirement account. We also see people invest in mortgages with private lending, and we'll be talking about that as well. We see people invest into real estate assignments and options, real estate investment trusts, precious metals, cryptocurrencies, LLCs, oil and gas, private stock, and the list does go on and on. And I don't know about you, Reneika, but I think since I really started this business and started it self-directing, more commonly when I hear people talk about investment strategies, my mind immediately goes to, oh, you can do that in an IRA. Did you do that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I personally started, I initially, like many of our clients, invest in real estate or private lending, but just over the years, I've had the luxury of just diversifying into, cryptocurrency or private equity. I actually just did a private equity last week, investing in land and notes and mortgages. It's essentially near limitless. So you get to see all of the fun investment or creative activities that our clients are doing.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about what inspired us in just a minute too, and you'll kind of see how that leads into the things that we have learned about. But why do people choose to self-direct? I mean, very simply, it's a new source of capital, access to cash that you didn't know you had access to prior to learning about self-directed IRAs. So you might hear about an investment opportunity that you're interested in or see a strategy that you like, and just knowing that you can use your IRA to make that investment opens up a whole new world. And that's a lot of times what we talk to people about. Often people come to me and Reneika and they say, hey, I didn't know you could self-direct. I didn't know that this was a thing. It must be new. I hear that a lot. It must be new. But actually the IRS has always allowed alternative investments in IRAs since 1973 or 4 when IRAs were created. It's just that there's not a lot of companies out there like Advanta willing to hold private investments. There's a lot of stock market fatigue when, we're sort of riding that roller coaster of the stock market. We're going to see a lot of people who are tired of it. They're unsure of those investments. And they're kind of migrating more towards something that they can touch, see, feel. They understand it. When people own a piece of real estate in their IRA, well, of course, the value of real estate still does fluctuate, but it's something that they can drive by. They know that it's there, and again, understand it a little better. And so that's a lot of something that we're going to see as well. And then, of course, tax benefits. When you have an investment with income coming back to your IRA, you have those tax deferred or tax-free benefits depending on the type of account that you hold. And so that's something huge that we see, because remember, an IRA doesn't pay, when you sell a property, for example, you're not going to have those taxes owed because the IRA is tax sheltered.
Okay, so just, talking about my personal journey in terms of why I started self-directing. For me personally, with most things, I usually look or think about the end or the long-term goal in mind. So, working backwards and breaking it down into smaller pieces, setting out a clear plan, a roadmap. So part of that thought process for me was, thinking about what is it that I want my retirement to look like. I've always had a keen interest just in business in general, but personally what inspired me was just being around other investors, other entrepreneurs. At the time I had joined a local real estate group and was just educating myself on different investment strategies, obviously, which was foundational to real estate, but also too there were classes relating to self-direction. I had read about it years ago and had forgot about it, but being in that specific environment just kind of compelled me to take action. Personally, like many people, I was thinking about obviously financial growth and retirement planning as a whole. We know the cost of living continue to rise, so beating or hedging against inflation, like, okay, what's the cost of living on medical care for me going to look like in 20, 30, 40 years? So I wanted to, proactively start now to be able to mitigate those costs. And then, of course, diversification, just not putting all of my eggs on one basket or being restricted or limited to just stocks and bonds. That's, like Larissa mentioned, the roller coaster, something overseas can impact the stock market here. So just wanting to, if I have an interest in real estate, well, let me just use my existing skill set to invest in something that I know, something that I truly understand. And then for me, just building and leaving a legacy for my family. Like, I have a nephew. I want to make sure that, building a retirement account, I obviously I don't outlive my money, but I'm also able to pass something on to him. So I did my my proper due diligence. I started looking at multiple self-directed IRA custodians. I talked with some of my peers and friends who are already self-directing their accounts. I did check out reviews. I asked a ton of questions. It took me about 6 months to get started. But ultimately, I knew Advanta was the right fit for me. Just having, again, that one-on-one account manager, me knowing exactly who I need to reach out to if I wanted to make an investment. For instance, I think last week, Monday, I reached out to my account manager, giving her an indication of what I wanted to invest in. It was a private equity, and by Wednesday, obviously we're very responsive here at Advanta, but we do allow, we do indicate like, hey, allow us time. But by Wednesday, my transaction was completed, and that's something I greatly appreciate. I'm looking at doing a JV on a real estate deal later this week, and I have that teed up, so I'm sure I can get that hopefully executed by late this week or early next week. So again, just having that concierge style service is something that really has been really beneficial as an Advanta client. I know Larissa, you can attest to this. We talk to clients every day, and they're ready to go same day, or sometimes it may take them a week or a couple of weeks to do their due diligence, or it may take them even longer, like a year, or however long it takes them. The only thing I would say is just make sure that you know what your retirement goals or visions are, but I would implore you to make sure that you're implementing or including this as an additional tool in the toolbox, a strategy to help you get to your ultimate retirement goal.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Reneika. And we started self-directing in different ways. So Reneika mentioned that she first started self-directing and then came on board with Advanta. And my experience was the exact opposite. I started with Advanta, and as I mentioned, I did a lot of the paperwork. So I did a lot of things where I saw transactions coming through Advanta. I helped clients pay expenses for IRAs, and also receive income and did transfers into Advanta for their upcoming investments and things of that nature. And that really got me interested in what people were investing in. And when at some point, I think it was in 2013, they asked me if I wanted to do marketing and education and business development, and that I would be doing a lot of networking for Advanta and teaching classes for Advanta. I took that chance, absolutely, because I wanted to learn more about the investment strategies our clients were learning. And so doing that, Reneika and I actually do a lot of networking. If you're listening to the webinar and you're local to us, you may have seen us out and about at a lot of the local investment clubs. And that really got me interested in the different things that you can invest in. Actually, I can remember very specifically, I was at a local real estate investment club, and they had a class going. It was a weekend class where they had women talking about investing in real estate and how to get started and what their experience were. And they had some very good advice. They were saying, if you're going to get invested in real estate, start small. It can be intimidating to get out there and rehab a property. And they talked about buying a property and starting with something that didn't need a whole lot of work. So if you're into rehabbing, you know that sometimes you can start demoing a wall, and then you just find a whole cluster of problems that comes up one right after another behind that wall. And so they were talking about starting with a property that needed very little work, and that would get your feet wet and getting started. And I'm not really interested in rehabbing property, but it did get me started in thinking what I did want to do, and how I could start small in that asset class and getting started. And so I really wanted to get invested in something that I understood better than the stock market. And your typical retirement account is invested in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And, sure, I could have somebody help me with that, but instead I really wanted to do it myself and diversify my portfolio. I was one of those people, stuck in the stock market and kind of tired of the ups and downs. And I really wanted to diversify so that I could really get a handle on what my investments were. And another reason is really truly teaching my children to do more with their retirement accounts. My hope for my kids, because they're small, is that they go into, life knowing that there are options for investing. I hope that they'll invest in real estate and different types of investments that will get them started on the right path. And again, like holding their hand and telling them that there's a way to learn about investments. And I hope that for my children, that will be something that they do, right out of the gate, instead of, me finding this out a little later. I'm hoping that they'll start with that, right out of high school or right out of college, whatever it is that they choose to do.
Okay, so certainly there are quite a bit of alternative asset options that, like Larissa mentioned, doesn't require a significant amount, meaning you can start where you're comfortable, starting with a small dollar amount that could be maybe peer-to-peer lending, and Larissa will talk about private lending shortly. You can look to invest in notes or maybe a partial note, just because again it's a smaller dollar requirement in terms of capital costs. We'll talk about tax lien, crypto, and precious metals, specifically as it relates to tax lien investing. It's really a unique method of real estate investment, more so that focuses on, purchasing, tax lien or tax deed on a particular property, due to unpaid taxes. So you as the investor, you get to buy the right to those to the overdue taxes, often with the potential or the opportunity to acquire the property if the taxes remain unpaid. So in terms of how does it work? So tax delinquency. If a homeowner fails to pay their property tax, the local government places a lien on that particular property, and this means that the property can be sold, due to the back taxes. It's then sent through what's called like the auctioning of that tax lien or tax deed, and this is just more so to help the county recover those unpaid taxes. Local governments typically offer these tax lien in person, or sometimes we're starting to see them transition to doing tax lien the auction online. So it definitely gives you opportunity in terms of being able to win the bid just from being in the comfort of your own home. But if you win the bid, the taxes that's paid, it's paid directly to you as the investor, or paid to your IRA, and not the actual county itself. You use your retirement funds to purchase that tax lien, and then of course if that property owner repay, you'll get those interest returns plus whatever you initially put in. In terms of earning interest, a lot of our investors who specifically like the tax lien strategy, they, depending on which state you're in, you can essentially, I know here in the state of Georgia, you're eligible for 20%. So you can strategize to where you just want to go after properties that that are likely to redeem, so you get that interest repayment flow back. Or if you were into just acquiring rental properties or doing fix and flip, going through the property auction is a good way to acquire real estate. So some of the advantages of tax lien investing, again, you get higher interest rates. You definitely do want to educate yourself. So I would encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. We've done webinars with Chantel Owens and other tax lien experts, subject matter experts, that can kind of guide you and teach you more about that. But it varies from state to state, so you do want to check on the rules as it relates to that. So some of the risks I do want to touch on really quickly in terms of just being mindful of the property conditions. If you end up with a property, it could require a larger sum to kind of get it rent ready, or get it up to market ready to flip. And of course, as it relates specifically to tax liens, the tax lien laws and regulation, it varies across different jurisdictions. So I would encourage you to make sure that you fully understand exactly the local registrations. You want to connect with an expert that can kind of help you navigate tax lien investing. So let's pivot and talk about cryptocurrency in your IRA. So cryptocurrency, also known as digital or virtual currency, it is a new asset class. It is also very volatile, but there is a lower barrier to entry. I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you are doing your due diligence before you enter, but you can start out with a smaller dollar amount just to kind of test it out, get familiar. Some of the advantages of cryptocurrency investing is you do have the potential for higher returns. So just historically, certain cryptocurrencies have shown significant price appreciation over a short period of time. So if you're doing your due diligence and you connect it with, or you've invested in a digital asset that has utility, then that's an opportunity for you to grow your smaller dollar account over time. And then diversification. Crypto can, again, it serves as a new class, but also too within cryptos or digital asset, you can diversify. You might see an asset that's focused specifically on tokenization of real estate that might be of an interest to you, or certain projects relating to the medical field. So just connect and do your due diligence. Some risk with cryptocurrency that I do want to reference is, of course, the volatility. It can be extremely volatile. It's subject to rapid and significant fluctuation. Right now, because it's still a new industry, there is considerable regulatory risk. So, there's many different government agencies here in the U.S. and across the globe that's, implementing or working through different crypto regulations. And of course, security concerns. You do want to make sure that you're aware in the proper ways that you can actually store your crypto. While the technology itself is secure, there has been record number of actually hacking or misuse of funds. So you just want to make sure that you're fully aware of what the risks are. If you're looking to invest in cryptocurrency with your Advanta account, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it directly through the IRA with us, meaning you would open up an account with, let's just say ErisX. It's almost like an API plug and play. We'll help you get your account open with us. You can open up an account with ErisX and then have Advanta send the money over to ErisX to purchase. Let's just say, for instance, if you're interested in Bitcoin, you can purchase that on that particular platform. The other way to invest in digital assets is indirectly through what's called checkbook control or an LLC. And that just simply means that you get to open up an LLC that's owned by your IRA, but you get to act as manager of that LLC. You then fund that LLC by moving the cash from your account with us over into a bank account that you control, but it's owned by your IRA, and then go to your preferred crypto brokerage or crypto exchange to then go ahead and purchase whatever digital asset that you have an interest in. I would encourage you to make sure that you're looking at assets that are utility based, that's been around, that has just a better track record, not something that's that's being hyped or considered a meme coin.
Reneika, we had a question pop up on cryptocurrencies and the LLCs. Will Advanta form the LLC for clients?
So unfortunately, we do not open up the LLC for you. What we can do is we always encourage you to, if you have your CPA or attorney, you can, ask them to assist with setting that up. Or if you need a list of resources, meaning, a CPA or an attorney who's comfortable with that, we can provide you a list of, maybe 4 or 5, and then you reach out directly to them to see, which one you prefer to work with. But it's essentially setting up an LLC. If you're familiar or comfortable with it and you feel comfortable enough, you can go ahead and open it up. But you also have to make sure that you draft what's called an operating agreement document. So you want to make sure that the verbiage outlines that the IRA is the actual owner. But no, Advanta does not, but we can provide you a list of professionals who can assist you with that process.
And another question that popped up was on the cryptocurrency platforms that Advanta works with. They want to know if we can provide a list or if we only work with a specific list of crypto platforms.
So if you have a crypto platform that you're already working with, or you have an existing relationship with, and they're open or receptive to accepting your IRA funds to purchase crypto, then you can do an introduction, have us connect with them to walk them through the process from what Advanta processes is from a compliance standpoint. But we do have 1 or 2 exchanges that our clients currently work with that we have familiarity with. But if you have your preferred exchange, you can certainly connect us and we can walk them through in terms of how that will work.
Great, thanks, Reneika.
You're certainly welcome. So I'm going to pivot and focus just more so about when it comes to investing in precious metals, specifically with gold leading the path. It is one of the oldest forms of wealth in terms of preservations. We know precious metals has been coveted in terms of its utility, beauty, its rarity since the beginning of time. And it continues to hold a significant place in modern investment portfolios today, especially with inflation. It's usually a safe haven for most investors, especially self-directed investors, to make sure that they include precious metals in their retirement account. So some of in addition to obviously the benefits of it being a safe haven, security factor, the tax advantages, it also provides a hedge against inflation, the option to really diversify in that it can provide that diversification because it moves inversely from the stock market. We know like it's a physical, tangible product, even though you too have to store it in a depository. Gold or precious metal is physical, so it does give you some sense of security. And there's just always a global demand when it comes to precious metal, especially with gold and silver typically being the 2 preferred investments in a retirement account. So what can you actually invest in terms of the types of precious metals? It's gold, silver, platinum, palladium. These are the primary ones that are held within self-directed accounts. But just do know that the metals have to be within a certain grade or quality or purity. For instance, with gold, platinum, and palladium, it has to be 99.5% in terms of purity. With silver, it's 99.9%. So just make sure if you're working with a metals dealer that they actually do have IRA approved quality metals that you can actually store.
We had a question pop up on investing in metals. They want to know if they can invest in rare or antique coins.
So unfortunately not. The IRS do have, a few restrictions. You have a long list of things you can invest in, but collectibles and rare coins are one of the few restrictions that you cannot purchase in your IRA. So you can certainly, and I'll touch on the different types of coins that we typically see clients invest in one or two slides, but rare coins is not one that's approved. So the steps to get started with us, whether you're opening up a traditional Roth, Simple SEP, ESA, HSA, the first process would be to, of course, go through the paperwork, get your account open with us. We generally get your account open pretty quickly within 24 to 48 business hours. You can fund your account by transferring from an existing IRA or doing a direct rollover from an old employer plan, or if you're eligible, make an annual cash contribution. The second step is choosing a precious metal dealer. It's very important with every investment. We tell our clients, making sure that you're doing your due diligence. You want to make sure you're selecting a dealer that you're comfortable with, that you've done your due diligence, that you know that they're reputable. You can certainly reach out to us. We don't endorse anyone in particular, but we can provide you a list of metals dealers that our clients have used over the years to purchase their gold or silver. So once you've get your account set up, you found a metal dealer that you want to work with. The types of coins that we typically see, or metals that we typically see, for instance, for gold, you can invest in the American Eagle. You can do the Australian Luna. You can do the Buffalo bullion coins. For silver, American Eagle is popular. The American the Beautiful is popular. The Canadian Maple Leaf is a pretty common coin that we see our clients invest in. I personally have some silver and gold in my IRA, and those are some of the holdings I have as well. Do know that in addition to investing in the Canadian Maple Leaf, you can do bullion bars, you can do rounds, as long as it meets that minimum purity requirements. And again, check with that metal dealer to make sure that it's IRA approved. You can certainly look to purchase that. The next step is choosing a depository. Advanta, we do have a list of about maybe 9 or 10 depositories that our clients store their metals in. So again, if you need that list, reach out to us. I did highlight 2 of them, which includes Delaware Depository and Money Metals Depository. But we do have a longer list of depositories that you can possibly store your IRA metals at. You do want to make sure that when it comes to self-directing, whether you're doing it directly in the IRA or indirectly through an LLC, you still have to have an IRS-approved depository. You can't personally store those metals. And I'll touch specifically on a court case where an investor was doing the checkbook control feature, and they had precious metals, and they were self-storaging. So just be mindful of you can possibly jeopardize if you're self-storing any metals that's owned by your IRA. The 5th and final step is actually completing the transaction. Again, working with your Advanta IRA account manager to fill out the purchase authorization, to give consent, to have Advanta handle the payment, send the money over to the metals dealer, and also to pay the depository. The metals dealer in this case will ship the precious metals over to your preferred depository, and of course the depository, their responsibility is to make sure that they receive and properly store the metals on behalf of your IRA. Some points to remember when it comes to IRA, and I know Larissa just asked, someone in the audience asked a question where it says, there's no rare coins or collectible coins. You have essentially a blank canvas in terms of what you can invest in. Yes, you can purchase IRS approved coins, but no rare or collectible coins. Just know that you can't transfer, if you own precious metals today personally, you can't transfer it over or sell it over to your IRA. You have to purchase, new gold or silver or, platinum or palladium directly from an approved metals dealer. And then, of course, again, it's very critical, it's very important to make sure that it's stored at an IRS-approved depository. It's not held within your house, or you're not doing self-storage. There was a court case a couple of years ago where the Minolti court case where they did the checkbook control feature, which allows you great flexibility, and they purchased precious metals, and they, instead of storing it at a depository, they stored it, at their house. So ultimately, the IRS was able to take them to court and show that, they didn't have restricted access. They actually had direct contact with that metal. You own your retirement account, absolutely. You control your retirement account, but you do have to think of it as its own separate person, its own separate entity. So it's related for when you retire, so there shouldn't be any personal benefit to you today. So just making sure that if you're investing in precious metals, you find an approved depository that can store those metals on behalf of your retirement account.
You talked about transferring assets to an IRA, and we had a question pop up. Can I transfer my real estate investment to my IRA?
Unfortunately not. So if you personally own, let's just say you own 123 Main Street today, you cannot sell it or transfer it over to your IRA. You would have to purchase that property from the very beginning in the name of your IRA, or you can look to partner your IRA with yourself and purchase new properties. But if you already or currently or existingly own that IRA, you can't sell it to your IRA. So there's certain persons that are considered disqualified. That's you as the account owner, your spouse, any lineal ascendants or descendants, just meaning parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, any spouses of your children or grandchildren. So if your mom owns 123 Main Street, they cannot sell it to your IRA. You can certainly partner with mom and dad, or you can partner with yourself and go out and buy a new property, but you cannot sell or transfer an existing property into your retirement account.
That's a good point, Reneika. And to kind of go into that a little deeper too, if you own an LLC, because I feel like I get this question a lot, if you own an LLC that owns a property, that doesn't get you around those rules. So just keep that in mind. When you own something personally, whether it's through an entity or directly, you cannot sell it to an IRA. So having it in an LLC or a trust isn't a way to get around those rules. And we talk more specifically about that in other webinars where we talk about real estate IRAs or self-directing 101, things of that nature if you'd like to learn more about that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about private lending. I like to do some private lending with my IRA, and I'm not going to talk specifically about what I do as far as terms are concerned, but we're going to talk more broadly about how private lending works in an IRA and what you can and can't do. So Reneika just talked a little bit about disqualified persons and prohibited transactions, and I know those terms seem a little overwhelming, but basically she was just telling us what we can and can't do and who we can't transact with, and that is going to extend to private lending. Sometimes people will say to us, well, can we lend money to our son or daughter? It'll be a first mortgage, they'll pay interest to our IRA, and unfortunately that would be prohibited because that person is disqualified. So when you're looking at lending money, you want to make sure that you're doing it at an arm's length transaction, so essentially nobody related to you up and down that lineal tree. And you want to also make sure that you don't have a current benefit for doing that loan. So if you were lending money and somebody said, well, if you'll lend money to my son or daughter for their first house, then I will lend money to your son or daughter for their first house. And unfortunately, that sort of what I call reciprocal lending would be considered prohibited. So again, arm's length transactions. So you can lend money in the form of a traditional mortgage. It's something that we're all very familiar with when you purchase your own home. You get a traditional mortgage for 15 or 30 years, maybe shorter or longer. They are typically going to be 30-year amortized, and you can do that in an IRA, but it can also be an ARM or a balloon note. You can lend short-term or long-term. It could be transactional funding. You can also lend unsecured. I know sometimes people will say, why would you lend unsecured? But we have a lot of people that lend money unsecured. And you just, again, making sure you're doing your due diligence and you're comfortable with that loan. Remember that Advanta IRA is not going to tell you whether or not this is a good or bad investment or if it's a good return. It's going to be up to you and your team of professionals to make that determination. And if you don't have a team of professionals, now is a great time to start asking around, talking to other investors or family members and friends about CPAs and attorneys that can assist you, or again, reaching out to Advanta IRA and finding out who our clients have used in the past for helping them making those, doing that due diligence on those investments. It can be equity participation. Reneika mentioned joint venturing. You can do that through your retirement account. And notes secured by things other than real estate, so farm equipment, automobiles, livestock, and just being aware of how you're going to put people on notice that there is a lien on these assets. When Corey and I did a webinar on unique investments, we talk about lending money secured by farm animals, actually. So there's a lot of different strategies that we see people do. And we do a whole webinar called Being the Bank with Your IRA, where you get to determine everything that the bank would when you're creating a note and lending to a borrower. So it's the amount borrowed, interest rate, length of term, equity participation, and date and delivery for payments, and when the payment is due. This does not have to be something that you have monthly payments on. I know, again, that that would be something we're very familiar with, but we have seen people here at Advanta do single payment notes, for example, and that is allowed. We talked a little bit at the very beginning about how the IRS doesn't have any requirement that you have regular income being returned to the IRA. So think about how we talked about land, and that land might not have a tenant, so you might not have, you know, an agreement with a local farmer, or you might not be leasing that to, you know, a winery, for example. And so if you're lending money and you say, you know what, this is going to be a single payment note, or payments are going to be due quarterly or twice a year, that's completely between you and the borrower. And just remember that the bank would consider things like penalties for late payments. And so as the lender, as the bank in this scenario, you want to make sure that you're taking all of that into consideration. So benefits, you get to act as the bank and determine the terms and what you're willing to lend your money out at. You can set the rate at which your IRA is going to grow. So if you're willing to lend it at a certain interest rate, well, then you know that that is the rate at which your IRA will grow. There's less liability when you lend rather than own the actual real estate. So we like to say, if you don't want to deal with tenants, toilets, and termites, then you can be the lender, be the bank, and handle investing in real estate in that way. It can be a very low maintenance asset. So if you're lending money, again, no tenants, termites, or toilets, but again, just making sure that you're doing your due diligence on your borrower so that you're getting those payments back to your IRA at regular intervals when you expect to receive them. And you can also partner funds among other IRAs or individuals to lend more money or be a part of a lending structure that includes more money. So I'm going to use this case study basically as an example so that you can see how private lending works in an IRA. Remember that as a lender or IRA holder, you're going to determine everything. Advanta IRA is not going to give you advice here. So if you say, okay, well, I'm willing to lend money at 8% and 2 points, or 10% and no points, or 15% and 5 points, then that's completely between you and the borrower. In this example, the IRA holder lends $120,000. They find a qualified borrower. And I feel like I get a lot of questions on this. People will say, well, how do you find a qualified borrower? There's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can do it through networking at local events. So if you go to real estate meetup groups, for example, then you might get to know and like individuals in that group, and you're willing to lend them money. You might form a relationship with a mortgage broker, somebody who puts borrowers and lenders together. Remember, Advanta is not a broker. We don't put borrowers and lenders together. So there's a lot of networking opportunities where you maybe want to find somebody who does provide that service, or where you get to get out and meet borrowers directly. Make sure you're doing due diligence on both the property and the borrower. So as the IRA holder, that is going to be up to you to make sure, one, that the property is valued at what the borrower claims the property is valued at, so that if you should have to foreclose or take the property back in some way, that you are recouping your loss on the investment, and doing your due diligence on the borrower. And in this example, you agree to lend $120,000 at an 8% interest rate with a 5-year balloon and a monthly payment. And this is secured by a first mortgage. So we had a question pop up about the first mortgage position and whether or not the IRS requires the IRA to be in first position. And actually, the IRS doesn't require any type of security. Remember, we talked a little bit about unsecured lending. And so that is permitted within the IRA, again, making sure that you're comfortable with this investment. But it could be unsecured, but it could also be a second mortgage, a third mortgage, a fourth mortgage. And so when you're doing your due diligence, if you're comfortable with the amount of equity in that property to take on a second, third, or fourth position, then we would just simply be helping you with the paperwork in order to make that investment. The IRA holder opens and funds their IRA account and handles the paperwork. Now, if you're handling, so we don't do any legal documents at all. So if you're doing, let's say in the state of Florida, we use mortgages. I know some states are deed of trust states, but here in Florida, we use mortgages. So there would be a note and mortgage, and your attorney could help you with that paperwork, or the title agent or closing attorney could help you with that paperwork, but essentially providing Advanta with that paperwork in order to show the IRA as the lender, who the borrower is, the terms of the note, the type of security, and anything that would be recorded in public records. So that would be the note, or excuse me, the mortgage, and sometimes it's the note and mortgage, and sometimes it's the deed of trust. But ultimately, that paperwork would come to Advanta. Your account manager will review that paperwork to make sure it shows the IRA properly as the lender. And then once we do that and everything looks good, we send it over to the IRA holder to give us permission to make that investment. So the IRA holder is going to approve of the paperwork, say, yep, I've reviewed it all. This is exactly the investment that I wanted to make. They fill out 2 forms for us, giving us permission to make that investment, and then money will go out, and we are taking the direction of the IRA holder. So is it going to a closing attorney, a title agent? And if it's going directly to the borrower, we have some additional things that we need to do. So for example, money that goes directly to the borrower, we would need the originally signed note in our office prior to funding. Once money goes out, in this case, because it's a first mortgage, the mortgage is recorded, and the mortgage and note are sent to Advanta for safekeeping, and the investment is complete.
Larissa, a question came in. Does Advanta hold on to the original, or does the industry get that back?
Yep, so we do hold the original note and mortgage. We do the safekeeping for that with very few exceptions. And like I said, especially for an unsecured note, we want that actually, that originally signed note at Advanta prior to funding. And that's very important because that note is the instrument for the loan. And so if there were ever an issue, if the borrower wasn't paying, you would want to have that originally signed note, and therefore Advanta will do the safekeeping for those. After close, the borrower is going to send monthly interest-only payments, or in this case, monthly interest-only payments or amortized payments to Advanta. Advanta will deposit them. In this case, the borrower is sending them directly to Advanta, but if you prefer to check them off in your ledger as they come in, you can do that. You just want to always make sure that the payment is made to your IRA, and that's very important. But keeping also in mind that Advanta is not a loan servicer. So if we receive the payments directly and we deposit them, if you said, hey, was that received on the first or on the second? And especially in cases of like weekends, for example, I think we're coming up on a weekend where the first is on a Sunday, we're not going to make sure that that payment was received in the weekend's mail or on Monday. We're just going to simply deposit the check. So it's going to be up to you as the IRA holder to determine whether or not you want to use a loan servicer or have those payments mailed to you or to your PO box so you can check them off in your ledger and determine whether or not a late payment is going to be, a penalty is going to be assessed. But ultimately, that check needs to be made payable to your IRA. You never want to take receipts of funds into your personal bank account and then forward on a payment to us. If we receive a payment made out from you to your IRA, that's always considered a contribution. There's no other way to code that. So you want to make sure your borrowers are making payments directly, made out directly to Advanta. We can also accept ACH payments from your borrowers if you prefer, just making sure that your borrowers have all the correct information so that when we receive that ACH, we know that it's for your IRA and what asset to credit it to. Payments are deposited directly to the IRA account, and you can track those payments with emails that we send out when we receive those payments, and also with online statements through your online portal. 3 years later, in this example, the borrower decides to sell the house and the IRA will receive, remember these were interest-only payments, will receive the principal back, $120,000 at the sale. And in my example here, the IRA made $28,800 in interest payments during the life of the loan. And the IRA pays no capital gains and there's no holding period. I get that question a lot before the IRA can make a new investment. So as Reneika said, money goes in and out pretty quickly for our Advanta IRA clients. So when this IRA holder receives that $120,000, the very next day they could be prepared ahead of time for that money to go out for the next investment. So you can really keep that money earning and moving and working for you in that sense.
Okay, so just to reiterate, in terms of the types of investment you can possibly look to invest in, your traditional Roth IRA or an employer-sponsored plan. We did touch on private lending. We looked at investing in some smaller accounts. Some smaller or starting small in the likes of crypto, tax lien, or precious metals. But do know that again, it's near limitless in terms of what's on the table for you. If you have an interest in short-term Airbnb type rentals, you can certainly do that. If you're interested in, storage units, or if you're interested in, investing in multifamily syndication projects, we, have a lot of clients that are investing in oil and gas right now. So you get to decide exactly what is it that you have an interest in, what is it that something that you're comfortable with, you have an understanding. If it's, doing a long-term rental, or it's tax lien to where you end up with the physical property and you turn it into a fix and flip, or you do some shorter long-term rental. You have a lot of options what's on the table when it comes to self-direction. You can do LLC to JV on particular deals. You can do LLC to allow you some flexibility to where you get to invest in multiple alternative assets within that LLC structure. So if you want to know more, we've done, a consensus of different investment opportunities, had experts from, all genres of these instruments. So definitely feel free to check out our YouTube channel, or check out our video library on our website. Sorry. In terms of getting started, again, that process is pretty streamlined. You can actually go to our website and fill out the application online, or you can reach out directly to Larissa or I, and we can send you the appropriate paperwork. You get your account open within that 24 to 48 hour business hour window. We do assign you or pair you up with a dedicated account manager that helps you with the investment transactions on the back end. Step 2 is actually funding your account. You can do a combination of all three, which includes making an annual cash contribution as long as you've earned income. You can transfer as much or as little as you want to or need to from an existing IRA, or you can do a direct rollover of any former employer plan, like an old 401k or TSP type plan. And then finally, step 3 is, what is it that you have an interest in? I would just implore you to, again, get started. It doesn't, matter how much you start with, whether it's a small dollar account or it's a significant amount. You just, again, take action. So if it's real estate, if it's note and mortgages, if it's private lending, definitely reach out to us to, details as relate to investing using a retirement account.
So we're going to take some questions here at the end as well. And so if you have any last minute questions, just make sure to get them typed into the chat box. And we just want to let you know that we are here to empower you to take control of your and save for your retirement. And you might find that solution in a self-directed IRA. And because we really care strongly about working together and educating women, this will be the first of a series of webinars that we do. We're going to invite guests. Reneika and I have worked with a lot of fantastic women in the industry who, started out small and really created a business for themselves. And we're going to hear from them over the course of the next several months through different webinars. And so they'll talk about different investment classes, something that they are passionate about, and they'll tell us how they got started. And we hope that you'll join us for those webinars as we go on from here. We did have a question pop up about having a plan for a small business. So if you have a 401k, they want to know, if I have a 401k through my current employer and I can still have a plan for my own business as a sole proprietor, can I max out both? And so the way the contributions work for the plan that you have for your own business, it's going to be based on your self-employment income for that business. So if this is a side hustle or a business you're just starting, and so let's say, for example, that it earned $20,000 this year, then your maximum contribution is going to be made based on that self-employment income. It's completely separate from your W-2 job. So you just want to keep that in mind. And then how much you can contribute, again, based on that $20,000 in self-employment earnings, is going to depend on the account that you have. So if you go back and look at the contribution limits for those accounts, the SEP, the Simple, and the Solo 401k, then it's going to depend on how the formula works for that particular account. And you also are going to be limited on the contributions that you're making to your W-2 401k. So you have to take that into account when you're making contributions to your self-employment business's plan. And we can talk about that more offline and more specific to your business and your personal experiences if you reach out to us and give us a call. And I'll put our contact information up here on the screen for you. And I did not see any more questions pop up. So we're going to conclude our webinar today. Remember that this is recorded and you'll get the recording to your inbox once our team has had a chance to repost that. And so you can look for that. Please feel free to share it, review it, and reach out to Reneika or I with any questions. Thank you so much, Reneika.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you, Larissa. Happy investing, everyone.